All right, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back for those of you who have been here before and those of you who are new. We want to welcome you. This is the cancer conversation that we're going to have ongoing. My name's Dr. Roney. I'll be hosting. Um, and hi, everybody. I know I'm getting some chat saying hi, so I wanted to make sure I welcome everybody. Um, if you're new, we'll go through a review process, maybe take 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll talk about the previous classes. I'll give you an idea of what we're going to do moving forward. Tonight's class is going to be on the immune system. We're going to discuss with Dr. Henderson, who's also going to be on with me. We're going to discuss what happens to the immune system, how it gets what we call dysregulated. And I'll use the term, it gets kind of goofy. And when it gets goofy, it causes a lot of inflammation, and then it causes free radical damage, and then it causes oxidative stress and so forth. So I want to tie all those concepts together, but I want you to understand this whole immune system thing and what exactly happens. I think it's really relevant and really important to this whole process. So this is a very, very good class, a very good conversation, and the content of it, I think you'll get a ton out of it. So I want to give you, I had a patient earlier that asked me, hey, why should I come to your clinic versus others? And I thought about it a while. And I mean, I have that in my head constantly. But the one thing that I think is most relevant that I've been able to ascertain from looking at different clinics and websites and calling and just doing my homework, because if you're new to the class, I'm a patient as well. I've had cancer. Back when I was 28, I had a melanoma, freaked me out, didn't understand why. That same year, my dad passed away with cancer. So I've been on this journey, my personal journey as well. So as I'm researching and studying and learning, the one thing that comes to mind more than anything that I did explain to this patient, I said, it's the plan, right? So this is not the impression, this is to make a point. I played college baseball at a pretty high level, and the coaches that I've had won 5 national championships, took and then went to 8 of them. I was a part of a couple of those, never won one, but I was a part of those. And what I learned with those, this is the relevant part regarding a plan. Those coaches are 2 of the most winningest coaches in NCAA baseball history. So what you learn over time, and what I learned with those coaches, is that they had a plan. It was a really, really well thought out plan. And then they were relentless as it relates to the details, right? So they had a plan, they had details of the plan, and they just worked it. You know that old saying, plan your work and work your plan. Well, I realized looking back as to why they're so successful, because of that one concept, and they were very, very consistent to it. So the reason I say that is because my brain works and our brains work here, and Dr. Keneally is a big part of that, of course, is we want a plan that is so well thought out and so detailed that it leaves very few rocks unturned, and it allows for you as a patient to gain maximum upside with very little downside. And the point that I'll make with that, so I told this patient that, I said, the plan is the key. I said, it's so detailed and so well thought out that it allows you the maximum ability to heal. And I'm saying that to you as somebody who's actually a patient as well. So I explained to her. So the class itself, gang, is explaining the plan and the details. That's what I want to articulate. That's what we want to articulate to you. Not so much to sell you on the clinic, to sell you on the plan, right? You need a well thought out plan to increase your chances and create more predictability and less chance. That's the idea. I think in life, what I've learned in life, based on those coaches, is the plan matters. And if it's detailed and you're relentless to it, you feel comfortable with it, you're going to be able to maximize your upside. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that the selling part of anything, right, is I want you to understand a plan that you can understand, I can articulate it to you, or we can, and then you can put it in play. So Number one, you have less fear and anxiety. I think that is so critical that you can trust something so much and go, oh boy, they've got it. And the idea is nothing's foolproof, right? I say it every week. Nothing is foolproof, not in the conventional model of cancer care, not in this model of cancer care. However, if we can create more predictability and less chance, I think we win all day long with that concept. We'll win a lot of battles that way. Okay. I can't tell you we'll always win the war, but I know we'll win a lot of battles that way. And I think that's vitally important. So I wanted to just give you that concept because that's what I anchor to. It's the plan. It makes a ton of sense. And if you've been on the class, I think, and the feedback that I've gotten is that absolutely makes ton of sense, and people can understand it. And I hope I'm doing a good job of that as well. So anyway, let me share the screen, and I will. Okay, so last week I forgot to share the screen. Totally apologize, but I promise you it'll never happen again. So let me share the screen and get this up so we can start walking through, what we're going to talk about tonight and my review. So the clinic itself, we talk about this each time. So if you're new, 10 minutes of review, and then we're going to get started on this immune system. But basically, the clinic itself, when somebody comes here, day one, they're going to get, an evaluation. The doctors have pretty much already received a lot of your detailed information, but they're going to want to close the gap a little bit on some of the testing that we do. So one of the first things, and Dr. Henderson, this is her bio. I'll get back to this in a second. My bio, we already talked about that. You don't need to hear about me. But the 4 pillars, let's start there. The first pillar is going to be comprehensive testing, right? So we want to make sure that we're getting individualized care. We're going to specialize your care, not just cookie cutter like conventionally, but we want to individualize it or specialize it. So the testing that I'll talk about in a review is going to do that. Number 2, what are we going to do to kill the cancer cells, starve the cancer cells? What are we going to do to oxygenate your tissues? And what are we going to do to alkalize your body? That's pillar 2, right? The treatments. So over the last couple of weeks, Dr. Keneally and I talked about that, and I'll review those. Pillar number 3 is what we'll talk about today, are your immune boosters. Why do we want an immune boost? What is happening with the body that creates a weakened or dysregulated immune system? And then what can we do about it? So no matter what you're doing, everybody should be boosting their immune system when they have a chronic disease like cancer. And then pillar number 4 is your root causes, okay? So no matter what, one of the things that we have to do, we have to figure out this tsunami, hurricane, and a tornado that's going on in the body. What has created this process? So the root causes are going to be a big factor in that 4-pillar approach. So let's break it down just briefly. The first week that we did this, we talked about the RGCC test, and Dr. Henderson just walked in, so I'll welcome her.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, Dr. Henderson. You'll love Dr. Henderson, by the way. Super, super sweet, in my opinion. Very, very caring and very, very thorough. So when you know somebody is thorough, it's because they care. That's my opinion, and that's Dr. Henderson for you. So what we're doing right now, we're just going through a quick review, and then we'll get into the immune system. So
awesome.
So week 1, we talked about the RGCC test. I think that's super relevant because that test is going to give you the natural agents that your body's most sensitive to. It can give you the chemo agents that your body's most sensitive to. It also tests these repurposed drugs, at least some of them, that can help starve cancer, which I'll talk about in just a second. And then it will give you your circulating tumor cell burden, right? What those tests do, along with nagalase, PHI, D-dimer, they allow us to start individualizing your care. And I think that's so critical because, say, in the conventional model, it's somewhat cookie cutter. They use some research that they've done over the years and they say, well, this is what we do. Is that fair to say? Now, again, that may or may not work, but remember my initial comments. What I like is a plan that's more predictable. And if you can detail some of these natural and chemo agents that you're more sensitive to, it just creates a little bit more, if not a lot more predictability. Is that fair, Doc? Yeah. So your nagalase, for example, we talked about that. If that's elevated, we need to bring that down because basically it's your cancer cells formulating a defense mechanism, right? So if we don't bring that down, your immune system has a hard time or any of the agents that we give you have a hard time of killing those cancer cells. So nagalase, for example, if it's up, salicinium is in the research to bring it down. Bravo suppositories can bring it down. And I'm not going to get into that tremendously because we already did, but I just want to give you that idea of, hey, we test these things for a reason. It's not just random. It helps individualize the care. PHI is an enzyme that if it's elevated, tells us that it's an anaerobic state using glycolysis, right? So we can bring that down with things that ozonate the body or oxygenate the body, I should say. So that's where we get into ozone therapy and hyperbaric. Again, the point I'll make, gang, is that these tests help get to pillar number 2 and more individualized care in pillar number 2. Is that fair? Yeah. So the testing is one of the most important things I think that we do in here to create that individualized care. Then we get to pillar number 2, and we have to starve, kill, oxygenate, and alkalize the body. So again, thorough, right? Kill phase, or let's start with the starve phase. We can use some of those repurposed drugs that are found on the RGCC that you're most sensitive to. And basically what they do, there's pathways that they found that feed cancer cells. Is that right? And so what we can do is as prescribe, or what the doctors can do is prescribe some medications that you're sensitive to that have been studied to block some of those pathways. It's not that we do it with everybody, but it's a strategy that we can implement that creates a nice, well-rounded approach to this thing. The kill phase is whether it's chemo, radiation, or surgery in the conventional model. Here, we might do low-dose chemo if it's warranted. And low-dose chemo basically brings the blood sugar down, uses the chemo agents from the RGCC, and they're infused when your blood sugar is lower. Basically, what that does, the chemo agents basically seek out the cancer cells because they're starving. It's like a heat-seeking missile. So we can use a lot less chemo as far as the percentage, 10%, maybe 20% or so, and it depends. It can go a little bit higher too. But the idea is we can be more specific to killing those cells and leaving the other environment intact. Fair? Yeah. So that's the low-dose chemo in the kill phase. Then you could have IV therapy killing the cancer cells like vitamin C and mistletoe and things like that. And then we use alkaline IVs, etc. Modalities, we talked about hyperthermia and we talked about endolaser and ozone and LED and sauna and why we use those. So again, I'm just giving you a quick review. And then the repurposed drugs like we talked about. And then there's advanced therapies that we can also implement. So the starve, kill, oxygenate, and alkalize phase is based on the testing that comes from the RGCC, nagalase, PHI, etc. So it gets very specific to you as an individual as opposed to cookie cutter. And remember, when I talked about the plan, that's why I love the plan, because it's not just random. It's really specific to you as an individual patient. And I think if we're going to maximize your upside and create more predictable healing, I don't think you can argue with that process, right? So that's just my opinion, right? But I'll give it to you because I'm hosting. All right, so pillar number 3 is going to be the immune booster. So part of the cancer diagnosis, which is what we'll talk about heavily tonight, is this dysregulated immune system, okay? So strengthening it, and we'll talk about regulating it, becomes a high priority, right? So in addition, any type of chemo can and will weaken the immune system. So we always want to have this pillar number 3 going simultaneously while you're going through care. And again, if you're preventing care, this is super important. If you have cancer currently, super important. And if you're trying to prevent reoccurrence, this pillar, I think, is critical to that process. So part of our treatment philosophy is strengthening the immune system throughout the process so it maximizes your healing potential. Again, driving your potential up, minimizing your downside. and creating a more predictable outcome. I think that's the main key that I like to focus on. And then pillar 4, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight, but the additional classes, gang, that we're going to work on in the conversation is going to be these causes that, and I'll mention some since we're on it, but say I'm eating a lot of inflammatory foods, or I have infections like bacteria, or Epstein-Barr, like a virus, right? A high viral load, or I have fungal infections like mold or candida. Say I have heavy metals, not that you have all these, but I'm just saying, say you have these things, and I'm overwhelmed with toxins like herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. I'm not detoxing properly, right? I have gene mutations. I have stress. I have hormone imbalance. I have blood sugar dysregulation, etc. All these things are going to cause fuel to the fire. And if I have too much fire, which Dr. Henderson's going to explain really well today, if I have too much fire and this immune dysregulation, I've got to do something about that. But I also have to get rid of the fuel to the fire, right? So I like to use this visual of a campfire. So if I have a couple logs on a campfire, maybe have a foot or two flame, I'm warm, I'm cozy, it's a very controlled fire, right? If I pour gasoline or propane or diesel fuel on that sucker is going to explode and we're going to have an inferno. So I'm not saying you necessarily have an inferno, but with a chronic disease, you certainly don't have a campfire. Is that fair? So I want you to think about that. You have this somewhere between higher than a campfire, maybe an inferno, right? So we have to control that. We're going to teach you how to do that tonight. But then we also have to figure out where the gasoline, propane, and diesel fuel is coming from. And that's all these different things that we just mentioned, toxins and infections and chemicals and foods that we put into our body, and stress and hormone imbalance and blood sugar dysregulation. All those things are gasolines to the fire. Okay, so we'll point that out and really break that down for you. But hopefully, at least big picture, that makes some sense, right? Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what is cancer, and I think that's relevant here. So basically, cancer is cells that replicate out of control. Their DNA and the genes of the DNA, like tumor suppressor genes and things like that, become damaged. And when they become damaged, they start replicating out of control. That's the simple version of it, right? Now, what I do want you to know is why that happens. Well, we have something called free radicals, which is, not to get too nerdy, but it's an atom that loses a paired electron. So in the atom, there's paired electrons. If you lose an electron or electrons from the pair, it becomes unstable. And that unstable atom is now a free radical. So if I have free radical, enough of them, I get a lot of oxidative stress. It's like rust on a bicycle, right? It's damage. That oxidative stress then causes the cells and the DNA and the genes of the cells to become damaged. What a damaged or old cell should do is it should go through cell programmed death called apoptosis, right? And if that happens, then those damaged and old cells die off. However, the free radical and free radicals that cause oxidative stress damage the DNA and the genes, and those damaged and old cells no longer die. They start replicating out of control. So you have free radicals, oxidative stress, damage to DNA and genes, and replication out of control of these cells. That's cancer, gang. So one of the things that we'll talk about today is what causes all those free radicals. That's the tie-in here. So again, we've talked about, pillar 1, pillar 2, all the treatments to starve, kill, oxygenate, and alkalize. Now we need to talk to you about the immune system and what happens to the immune system as to why all these free radicals are formed. I hope that makes some sense to tie it together a little bit. And now we'll be able to get into that story, because that story can be a little bit long. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about Dr. Henderson, because you're really good at this. So gang, there's a sheet here that I'm going to, basically I'll come back to and show you a little bit as Dr. Henderson is talking. But if you follow this general map on this slide, it'll talk to you about the fuel and the fire, and basically what happens what causes them, and then we'll talk about what happens to the immune system. So I'll let you kind of go and you do your thing here. So
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. And so I just wanted to touch on a couple points just to kind of summarize, that we know that cancer is a result of extreme immune dysregulation. And, cancer starts off as one cell and multiplies to a billion. By the time you have something, a lump, a bump, a mass, something you're seeing on scan, you're looking at billions of cells. So we really have to drill down and figure out why, what's the root cause. And for every patient, there's a root cause. It's different for everybody. But we know that immune dysregulation is a critical part of this. And it's very, very interesting because how does that happen? We all wonder, how does this happen? A lot of people come in and say, I was always healthy. I didn't get sick. But what's very interesting about this is immune dysregulation actually starts at the level of the gut in your GI tract. Your GI tract hosts actually 80% of your immune system, which a lot of people don't know. And it's very fascinating because we've learned that what actually happens is in a normal GI tract, see your skin, your GI tract, your mouth, that's your defense to the outside world. So in a normal person's GI tract, you have very tight cells that are tightly bound together that don't let foreign invaders out and in. And the brain is also connected with this. The gut, immune, brain, it's in a triangle. Everything's connected in your body. And so we know that what happens is all of these external forces and factors like toxins, infections, all these things that we look at as root cause, underlying root cause for cancer, they cause inflammation at the level of the gut. And what happens is these tight little junctions between cells in the GI tract become disrupted. And they can become disrupted for many different reasons, toxins, infections, viruses, even things we eat in our diet, including sugar, which is one of the most common culprits actually for gut dysbiosis or gut dysregulation. And what happens is you have a little opening, an invader gets in, and then the cascade starts. And once it starts, we can't stop it because what happens is the whole immune system is regulating in your gut, and you've got T helper, T suppressor, interleukins, all sorts of different chemicals that are secreted as a result of this interaction that happens between the gut, the cell, and the invader. And as this goes on, your body essentially is on fire. Brain on fire, gut on fire, body on fire. And that's where you really become immunocompromised. And that's where cancer can actually really start to take hold because that process is going on. You've got fuel to the fire, chronic, you've got multiple fuels to the fire. You've got stress, hormones, things in your eating, your diet, toxins in the world. And we have to put that fire out, which is part of pillar 4, is making sure that we're continually mindful because this immune dysregulation will not stop on its own. And it's absolutely critical that we treat it. And there are multiple modalities that we'll go through that with you that will do exactly that.
Yeah, it's great. The gut, to your point, 70 to 80% of that immune barrier, right? So as we start getting compromised, gut compromise, right? We also get blood-brain barrier compromise. So these are your defense mechanisms, right? To protect your brain, to protect your body. We get lung compromise. And all of a sudden, if we're getting these compromised barrier systems, what you're going to start to see is more and more sensitivities. So we lose our buffer system. So if I have a normal, healthy immune system, I can eat this and breathe this and do this, and it doesn't really fire off because I have a buffer, right? But as you start to lose, as we get more and more, to your point, fuels to the fire, and we start to break down our barrier systems and break down our, which is gut, blood, brain, and lung are the main 3. Now our environment starts to become overwhelming where it's no longer being protected. And that's what drives this inflammatory windup. So we get fire, fire, fire. And from the campfire analogy, we start to get into that inferno. And that inferno, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what on a daily basis causes more and more and more free radicals. So if we talk about that lineage of free radical damage, right? Your atoms lose electrons, unstable, so they're damaging, create oxidative stress, damage to the cells, cancer, right? And so it's very important because we haven't touched on this yet. The highest in the chain is the fuels. And then the fuels, how it dysregulates the immune system. That's critical to this whole process. So now you can start to understand, okay, when we start to look at, and we'll talk about this, why we recommend vitamin D, why we recommend things like turmeric and resveratrol and omegas and vitamin A and even glutathione, which we'll talk about. That cancer patients, we have to be careful with that one. But why are we recommending these things? Well, we're recommending them because the science says it can start pouring water on the fire, right? So we want to pour water on the fire to calm things down. But again, critical element, we have to start identifying the fuels or the causes.
Exactly.
Okay, so I just wanted to, right? Fair. Okay, God, I'll let you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, and so it's really important, because we're going to be dampening the fuel on the fire, but then we have to remove the triggers, because if you don't remove the triggers, then you can pour water all you want, but it's still going to keep going, and so that's part again of the root cause analysis that every patient goes through with pillar one, which is the blood testing and the analysis, and then the treatment plan, because we're looking at the circulating tumor cells, the cancer, and then all the root causes.
That's right.
And that's where the immune system becomes critical.
Yeah.
Because we have to repair the original injury and prevent more injury, and that's where a lot of the modalities we do, a lot of the IVs we do, and a lot of the advice about gut health comes from, is from science, really.
Yeah.
This is how you heal your body from the inside out.
And I think it's critical to understand. Remember, we talk about this plan, right? And what I like to do is when I learn this plan and teach it, I want you all to have enough knowledge so you can compare different plans, right? So if you're in the conventional world, which sometimes, gang, I want to be super clear, and Dr. Henderson will be very clear on this too, and I think we're total agreement. We refer patients sometimes for chemo, radiation, or surgery. It's not like we're opposed to that. Whatever you bring in, we have to meet with the aggressiveness, right? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to make sure when I say this, I'm not downplaying it. That could be a huge part of saving your life, quite frankly. But here's the thing. That's where the chapter stops. So I talked a couple of weeks ago about the 30 chapter book. Chemo, radiation, and surgery is one chapter of a 30 chapter book. There's 29 other chapters that unfortunately you may not be taught or even told about in that model. Okay, so now you talk about immune boosters, right? And that's what this immune system is all about, and getting rid of those fuels to the fire. Because when Dr. Keneally last week said, or 2 weeks ago, she said statistics on cancer haven't really changed much over the last 30 or 40 years as far as people getting better.
Right.
That's a true stat. Okay, I contend that one of the main reasons is they never look at the causes.
Absolutely.
Fair? I mean, listen, gang, you could come to your own conclusion with that, but I'll give you my strong opinion. That's pretty much why.
Right.
So if your plan doesn't include regulating and boosting your immune system and or cleaning up the causes, it's falling woefully short based on the research that we have today.
Yes.
Fair? I mean,
Yes.
Without being, I don't want to be condescending or anything. I really want to make sure you're seeing it from my vantage point, which I'm a patient too, not just a clinician. I'm going, that makes too much sense.
Right.
Right? Okay, fair. Okay, so on this slide, you see some of the triggers, right, gang? And then one of the things, and we talk on this slide about the breakdown of your intestinal tight junctions, blood barrier, skin barrier, lung barrier, right? And so if you don't mind, Doc, talk a little bit about the T regulatory cells and the T cells and B cells and what actually happens there.
Right. And so, the immune system is extremely complicated. And, I don't want you to get too into the weeds on everything, but there are different kinds of T cells, if you will, that regulate your immune system. And, on the slide, we have the T1 T cells, the attackers, the Th3, which are traffic cops, and the Th2, which are B cells. B cells are actually part of your immune memory, interestingly, because they're different kinds of immune cells. But what we have as a result of this cascade of inflammation is all these cells become dysregulated. Where normally you have an antigen or a foreign invader, you've got your immune system responding, they attack, kill, destroy. There are ones that survey, they all have different functions. But what happens is none of these cells can do their job because everything's dysregulated.
Mhm.
And then you have ongoing immune dysfunction, ongoing problems. And, interestingly, a lot of us have circulating tumor cells in our body from different times, time to time. People will have circulating tumor cells, but if your immune system is
That's right.
functioning, it will clear them. That's what normally happens in a normal person.
Mhm.
But when you have the dysregulation in the intestine, the skin, the lung, anywhere that you have a problem with the dysregulated immune system and T cells that are not handling themselves properly, that's when cancer starts to grow.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason too. I just want to mention it's really important to check for circulating tumor cells, because regardless, as Dr. Roney mentioned, we do tell a lot of patients you need to get chemotherapy, standard radiation based on the aggressiveness of the cancer. However, if you don't address the immune system, the circulating tumor cells, and the root cause, you're never going to win the fight.
Yeah.
It's critical to address this part in order for your body to heal completely.
And I'll add to that, right? Because again, when I started the conversation, what I talked to them is creating predictability. So if I have a patient that say had a lumpectomy, had radiation, right? The doctors tell him you're totally clear. Well, she's here as of last Monday getting the RGCC test and her oncotrace, which is just the circulating tumor cells. Because if they're still there, we still have work to do.
Right.
So I guess the point, to your point, is it's creating more predictability. So if they told her, for example, there's a 90+% chance of 5-year survival rate with lumpectomy and radiation, which is fantastic, by the way. However, why not make it 98, 99, 100? So test the circulating tumor cells, right? If there's no burden, great. If there's a burden, we still have work to do.
Right.
And if those are left, right, as rogue cells, what could happen? Right?
Well, you'll have metastasis.
Yeah.
And that's why we see all the time, and you have all seen, oh, you're in remission, your scans are clear. And then 1 to 5 years later, the cancer's everywhere.
Right.
And that's because, in conventional oncology, this isn't always addressed, the underlying root cause, the immune cell dysfunction, and the circulating tumor cells. Because like I said, cancer starts off as one cell, one circulating tumor cell in your body,
Mhm.
and then you have a billion. So you have to address it at that microscopic level.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, gang, when we're learning this, even as clinicians, you're learning it, you're just going, why doesn't everybody do this? Right? It's some of this is so, I think, somewhat remedial when you learn it. You go, yeah, this makes perfect sense. Can't answer that, right? Don't
Right.
always know the answer other than giving you the solution to the problem.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
So yeah, okay. So when we talk about these traffic cops, as you can see on the slide here, your T regulatory cells, because from my studies and my understanding, that's the key to this whole problem, right? Because when you have too much gut barrier compromise and you have too much inflammation going on in the body, what's going to start to happen is these traffic cops that I think of a traffic cop directing traffic in one of the city streets, right? It's an orchestra. They're letting these people go and these people go at right time so there's not a crash. Well, think of a traffic cop that becomes drunk. And let's think of what would happen to the traffic, right? We're going to start knocking heads. So basically, when your T regulatory cells that control your attackers and your taggers and your suppressors and something called your Th17, not to get into it, but your nitric oxide pathways, when they're affected, the traffic cop no longer directs traffic. So I'll get into, if you don't mind, Doc, a quick, if I had, say, well, COVID's common. So let's talk about a virus in our system. If I had a virus, what the T regulatory or traffic cop should do is tell the attackers, if you see the T cells here, is to go attack, right? As my body overcomes that virus, then the T regulatory or traffic cop is going to tell the T cells to calm down. We're back to equilibrium. It's fair?
Mm-hmm.
And then what the traffic cop will do is tell the B cells to go tag it. That way there's a memory to it, and that's an antibody. So if we're exposed to it again, supposedly, what should happen is we should build up a defense before we get sick. Right. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. That's very general in the explanation, gang. But what I want you to know is when you have all these fuels to the fire and a lot of inflammation, guess what doesn't work well? That T regulatory cell. So I want to mention, and this is so critical because patients' eyes light up when I tell them this. How many patients do you have? And I know the percentage for me that are low on vitamin D.
Oh, probably like
Almost all.
99.9,
Yes. And,
99.
and most of you,
Yeah.
if you've seen your labs, you're low on D. And this is a big revelation. Now you're going to know why. Because one of the most significant immune regulators to the human body is vitamin D. So when this cell is working overtime and your body is trying to regulate it, it's using every bit of your D in order to do it, right? And you can't keep up. There's not enough sunlight to be able to do that. So people are like, oh, I'm in the sun all the time. If this is going on, it doesn't matter. You are going to have to supplement and supplement quite heavily. But remember, this is not the cause. This is a byproduct.
Right.
So using D, although is a good solution, right? We want to do that. We always go back to having to calm down the fire, but take away the fuels.
Mhm.
It's so critical to this process. So vitamin D is very critical to sobering up the traffic cop, as well as something called glutathione, right? Now, there is evidence, and I have to always say this, that glutathione, now there's contradictory evidence, but in this clinic, Dr. Keneally feels like with the evidence, we can't recommend glutathione to our cancer patients because the cells, cancer cells, in some studies, use that to protect themselves.
Right.
So we have to be careful. So I want you to know, even though glutathione is recommended to almost every patient personally, to cancer patients, we have to be careful. Okay, so I just want to mention that. But those two supplements are excellent for sobering up the traffic cop. If you have a more sober traffic cop, now your body, your immune system can start working better. Okay. And things like we'll use resveratrol and turmeric, for example. When we have too much inflammation, the way to knock inflammation down are using things that are proven. Now, the RGCC test will help individualize this, but as a general rule, turmeric or curcumin, which is the active form of turmeric, and resveratrol are very good for knocking these things down. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's research, gang. So when we start to create a plan, we don't want to be random with the plan. We want to be very specific. Get rid of the fuels and start pouring water on that fire.
Right.
D, glutathione, resveratrol, turmeric, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin A, very, very critical in order to do that. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to tie that T regulatory cell.
Right. And I just wanted to mention and reemphasize too, that that's part of the RGCC test is we're going to look at the circulating tumor cells in a Petri dish and look at these supplements. Now we all need vitamin D, but things like curcumin, vitamin C, mistletoe, we're going to see, are those agents actually effective at killing the circulating tumor cell? Because every supplement, every IV that we give to patients, we want to make sure that it has a purpose and a direction that we're going with, something that we're looking for, an achievable goal, instead of just tons of supplements.
Exactly.
So it's very focused.
That's right. So, and I'm glad you brought that up, because even if we wanted to use antioxidants, right, we can use the RGCC test, and I put this slide on here, and the NutriVal test. So, you're using RGCC and PHI and nagalase and so forth to get specificity, but then these other tests allow us to do it too. So again, the NutriVal test, this isn't to promote tests or promote supplements. It's really to give you more of an idea of there is a method to the madness.
Right.
So I go over the NutriVal every day, and the NutriVal will test oxidative stress, mitochondria function, omegas, methylation, and what's the other one it tests? Oh, toxic exposure.
Right.
So it's going to look at your B vitamins and your antioxidants, and it's going to look at your vitamins and minerals and your gut health and pathways of what they call Krebs cycle, which produces energy. And it really gets a good look at your metabolic system, right? Now, is it perfect? May not be perfect, but it gives us a great tool to be able to start individualizing things better. So again, we're mentioning these supplements, but that's not why we're here. It's more, I want to make sure that you understand, if there's something specific that we think could help you, we'll at least mention it.
Absolutely.
Fair? Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything to add to that part right now, Doc? Okay. All right. So I put these recommendations there. So what we can't do, gang, and I just want to make sure, if I recommend something because it has relevance to the course that we're doing, I can put them on here, but I can't tell you how much to take and what to do.
Right.
That you're going to have to find somebody. And I always say every week I'm here. I always say you're going to have to find a clinic and or a doctor that's really well versed in all four pillars to guide you through. Now, this is biased. Unfortunately, personally, I haven't found that.
Right.
I really believe that the clinic here has the best plan and the best resources, but that's from my own personal due diligence as well. And again, I'm a little bit biased because we're downstairs putting all the processes together, hiring advocates, making sure we have people to dot I's and cross T's. And going back, I told them the story of my college career in baseball. So the coaches were like they're top winners in NCAA history. What I learned from them is that their plan was super, super solid, and they were relentless with working the plan.
Right.
So I gauge everything. If you all have been with me, I'm almost type A, like very analytical, because I want the steps to add up till we get to a predictable outcome. I think life in general, I've applied that to life and it's worked really well overall. Not perfect, of course, but I mean, maybe. Just kidding, gang. So there are your immune regulators and inflammatory control supplements. So talk a little bit about your understanding of vitamin C, because it has relevance in pillar number 2, because it's proven to kill cancer cells, right?
Right.
The whole hydrogen peroxidase at high levels starts to create an environment where cancer cells can't survive as an immune booster, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, vitamin C is fascinating, guys. It's, one of these age-old remedies. If you know anything about Dr. Linus Pauling, did research on vitamin C for decades, and it's such a powerful tool. We know we take vitamin C supplements, swallow them, and at lower doses, it's a great antioxidant. At higher doses, it has really amazing properties, and that's why we give it through the IV at higher doses. And so vitamin C generates hydrogen peroxide, and hydrogen peroxide actually kills cancer cells, and it also changes the internal environment of the body. So it's actually oxygenating the body with the hydrogen peroxide. So it's a super powerful tool for viruses, for cancer, for actually anything, really. Such a firm believer in vitamin C, and we give it every day to our patients.
And that's why.
Yeah.
So again, coming back to a plan, why do we do vitamin C? Well, it's proven to increase white blood cells, which boosts the body's defense mechanism. Anybody going through any chronic disease, right? Number one, I don't care if it's autoimmune, cancer, whatever it might be, the immune system is going to be compromised, to your point. So vitamin C and vitamin C IVs get up to 25, 50, 75 grams. Depending, there's an enzyme that we need to test to make sure you can tolerate that much. However, taking it daily too at 2,000, 3,000 milligrams. So just to give you an idea, 3,000 milligrams is 3 grams. In an IV, we can give you up to 75 grams.
Right.
So that's one that, okay, if the shoe fits, wear it, right?
Yeah.
So if your treatment or your diagnosis, if you will, determines or dictates that there's a need to really go after this thing, vitamin C will certainly be on there to boost your immune system and also kill cancer cells.
Absolutely.
So it has dual effect, pillar 2 and pillar 3. Fair? Okay. All right. Mistletoe.
Yeah, so mistletoe is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is, right?
It's actually, a plant. And it's funny, I had a patient bring me actual real mistletoe yesterday that I have in my office, which is really cool. So yeah.
Is the mistletoe the thing they use in Christmas?
Yeah.
And this is a dumb question.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
they hang it for the, and then
I know somebody had that question, so I asked for you.
It is the same mistletoe, and it's actually just a plant, a green plant. And so it really is an amazing compound. And, we know that it's extremely powerful for boosting the immune system, and it actually causes apoptosis. So it actually causes cancer cells to die. And we see that immune response a lot of times with the mistletoe. We actually wait for an immune response, looking at the skin to see when the immune response occurs, to see that it's successful. So it's a very exciting therapy.
That's great. And I don't know if you saw Dr. Henderson's face when I mentioned it. She got giddy. You lit up.
Yeah.
So this is one that you really, really like to use, because I know I see your orders and it's on there often.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, gang, there's a million things we could do to help you, a million, right? But there's a lot of resources here. But I will tell you, the things that I put in here, I gathered, from the other clinicians and what they felt most strongly about that I could articulate in a short amount of time. And the vitamin C and the mistletoe were two of the tops
Hmm.
consistently.
Hmm.
And we see it. So it's going to boost those T cells, and those T cells are your attackers. So it's going to give your body a better ability to attack. And as long as we're strategic about regulating your immune system as well, which again is why the D's and why we're so adamant about going after parasites and candida and toxins and chemicals and changing your diet, because that's when we're removing the foods too. So
Hmm.
again, this is one cog in the wheel. Fair? To a bigger picture plan.
Hmm.
But if the plan's done, I know I'm probably redundant on this class, but if the plan is really, really good and well thought out, there's barely, in my opinion, a rock left unturned. It really
Right.
is. Which again, if I have a family member personally, if something goes down, I know exactly what I'm going to do. There is no gray area. That's what and I didn't always feel that way. As going back 20 some years with my cancer, I didn't feel that way for a long, long time. But I really feel, based on everything I learned here from Dr. Keneally, Dr. Henderson, the other doctors here, studying for this class to be able to present this class in a way that I feel like is relevant for you all. I've learned too. And I go, oh, I'm crystal clear on what I'm going to do. So I'm adamant about sharing that for sure. Okay. So antioxidants, we went over this weeks ago, but I wanted to put these up here because remember the concept. If I have an atom that has lost an electron or electrons, there are things that we can do to add that electron back, which stabilizes the atom. Fair?
Hmm.
That's what an antioxidant is. So vitamin A, vitamin C, they call it, we learned it as ACEs, right? Vitamin E, C, E, selenium, CoQ10, ALA, alpha lipoic acid, and on the NutriValve, ALA, alpha lipoic acid, is low almost
All the time.
100% of the
I
time.
know. Yeah.
And I'm still trying to, do you have any, not to put you on the spot, but do you have any idea why that is?
I don't know, but I always see it.
Yeah.
I don't know if just in our diets we can never get it. We don't get it.
I'm gonna find that answer out
Yeah.
because it's driving me crazy. I did some research on it. Like, why is everybody low on
Yeah,
ALA?
they
I mean,
are.
across the board.
Yeah, I agree.
So either it's not in a food, or sometimes our bodies may not have the ability to process it right. I'm not sure of that answer, but anyway, I'll find that out for y'all. Turmeric, I think, is one of the best anti-inflammatories and antioxidants. Resveratrol. All right, cute little story, right? 20 years of doing this, mentioning resveratrol constantly. It's the polyphenol found in red grapes, right? So they learned about it with the French paradox. So the French, years ago, they studied the French. They had very low heart disease, but had a high fat concentration in their diet, right? Now we know fat's not the reason, but anyway, they studied the fact that they drank a lot of red wine, and they found resveratrol from studying this. So as soon as I mentioned that, what do you think the ladies do?
They say they can drink wine.
That's exactly right. Right away. They're like, you mean I can have wine? No, because there's toxins in wine, right? But I swear to you, that's the first question when I mentioned that story, that they light up. It's so funny, right? And if you are sitting there, you probably have the same reaction, like, oh,
Right.
I can get that from my wine.
Exactly.
Still toxic. Alcohol is a toxin, and there's other problems with that. I had one of the patients stop me today. She was doing some UBI, and we were talking a little bit, and she said, "Are you going to tell me to get rid of my wine?" And I said, "Oh boy, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but we'll see. Maybe all this is dictated. Your plan would be dictated upon where you are in this process. If you're still doing wellness and preventative, maybe once in a while, good organic wine, probably not a bad idea, right? Now, again, don't quote me on that, but it's all dependent on where you are. If we need to really clean you up hard, we may have to get rid of things like that, and then come back to it at some point. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
So I don't want to give individual advice, but anyway, glutathione is one of the body's most powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatories, and the human body makes it.
Mhm.
But what happens is if I get this inflammatory windup going on, my glutathione, in the literature, it says it takes the bullet. So it tries to protect the cell from the oxidative stress. So you're using a lot of glutathione as well. So a lot of you are going to be low on glutathione too. It's just like vitamin D. It's the same concept. Your body's using it because you're going through this immune system dysregulation. So again, glutathione with cancer, we have to be careful. So I mentioned it. And then quercetin is a very good antihistamine, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. So gang, these are just, again, recommendations for antioxidants. When you do the RGCC, to your point, Doc, those antioxidants are tested. And then we can dial it in even more specifically. Okay. So I felt it was relevant to mention those because, again, if we have all these fuels and then we have this immune system dysregulation, we're going to get a ton of free radicals, which then leads down to the road of cancer. So I felt it was relevant to mention those as well. Okay. All right. So antioxidant levels, we talked about the NutriVal test, and the NutriVal test will test your vitamin A's and C's and E's and things like that. So that's a good test to have to get even more specific along with the RGCC. So that's why if you see it, if you're here and you see it ordered, that's why it's ordered. Okay. Any sorry, Doc, I don't mean, I'm going quickly.
No, it's good.
Anything you can add, you just stop me, okay? Like RGCC or
yeah, no, the NutriVal is actually a really great test, and interestingly, usually the categories overlap with some of the supplements. So when you look at that, it's easy to think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to take 25 supplements. But interestingly, like some of the supplements actually apply to both categories or all 4 categories. So we usually are able to kind of drill down and come up with a pretty simple plan.
That's right.
For a couple basic supplements that will apply for all the areas.
Yeah.
So.
And to that, I have a great, so if somebody has toxic levels that are high, that means that your liver is not either clearing or you have overexposure. So there's powders that are really good, Clearvite and Metaclear and things like that, that are full of antioxidants, full of vitamins and minerals, and full of your Bs and some of your sulfur-based MSMs and SODs. So sometimes you can kill a lot of birds with one stone with something like this too. So it's I don't know, you mentioned it, so I figured I'd talk about it.
No, absolutely.
We try to minimize the amount of supplements. It's just dependent upon where you are and what we need to do and how much we need to work on.
Right.
What Dr. Henderson and I were talking about today is kind of prioritizing. With the doctors together can prioritize and then start going after one thing at a time from a cause standpoint. Because to this point, gang, getting rid of the causes is really a process, right? And it's like eating an elephant. I tell all my patients, like one bite at a time. If we're doing pillar number 2 and 3, pillar 2 is killing and starving and oxygenating. That's probably the highest priority, right? We've got to kill those cancer cells. We've got to starve them. We've got to get your body oxygenated and we've got to boost it. So if we're doing those, we have time to start cleaning up the tsunami hurricane. And, right. So again, a patient came in the other day, was already on chemo, but wanted to really minimize their effect from chemo and then also make sure their body's immune system is boosted and we're fixing the causes. But because she was on chemo already and just started, we're going to start her light because she wasn't feeling that great from the initial chemo. I recommended some pushes like Keton and Hepar push the day after chemo to get those toxins out of the body so they have less negative effect. And then we're going to start working on, I think we did a little bit of gut support because her gut was definitely compromised. And we'll start going down that path nice and slow. Of course, mistletoe and vitamin C were recommended as well. So anyway, again, gang, it depends on where you're at, what you're doing, as to how aggressive we will go right out of the gate. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so summary, right? Now this might make more sense, but you have fuel, which gives you fire, which is the fuels are the toxins and chemicals and foods that you might be eating and hormone imbalance and stress and things like that, which will create the immune system fire. That will create the immune dysregulation that Dr. Henderson talked about, which over time is going to create copious amounts of free radicals. So again, the more fuel and more fire, the more free radicals. Now your chances to have a chronic disease like cancer start to go way high because the oxidative stress will damage the DNA and the genes of the DNA, and old and damaged cells won't go through cell death. So now they start replicating out of control. I wanted to put this up here so you all could see the lineage, right? It is the fuels that drive this whole entire process. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why pillar 4, which we're going to talk about every class after today, we're going to do a review, obviously, but it's going to be like one full class is going to be on gut health. So Dr. Henderson and I are going to do that in 2 weeks. And then the next class is going to be on all the infections that your body could have that we typically see. Bacterial infections, your viral infections, your mold, or I'm sorry, your fungal infections like mold and candida, and how important they are to identify and get rid of, and what tests to do for them. And the gut the same. We'll tell you what tests are most relevant. And then moving down the line, we'll start talking about heavy metals, and then oral cavity, right? We'll start talking about gene mutations. So the point I'm making, not to bore you, but there's going to be another, gosh, I don't know how many classes, it could be 10 or 15 on just pillar 4, which are all the causes. So that those you want to tune in for, because we're going to spend an entire class on one cause, and we'll really break those down for you. And that, I think, will give you such power and so many tools in the toolbox that can help you. Okay, the next one, the takeaway, and this is just a repeat: proper testing to create an individualized plan. So remember, gang, whether it's here or somewhere else, yes, I believe here is one of the best on the planet because that's what I've studied. Individualized plan, that's number one. You need an individualized plan, not a cookie cutter. You need a plan to starve, kill, oxygenate, and alkalize your body, okay? Or starve and kill the cancer cells, oxygenate, alkalize the body. You need a plan to boost your immune system and regulate it as well simultaneously. And then get rid of the fuels and causes, okay? Fair?
Absolutely.
Hopefully, gang, after all that, the last 2 slides kind of tie it all together. That was my hope, so you could really understand this much, much better. Okay, so now what we'll do is I'm going to take, let's see if we can see where we're at with time. All right, we're good. Okay, so we're just under 6 o'clock. I'd like to keep it to an hour, but I get chatty, so it's my fault. Okay, so let's see if we can start with some of these questions here. I'll go up and start from the top and work down. And then, gang, I'm going to give you, I just want to make sure you understand that. So the supplement store is going to give you a 10% discount on any of the supplements, not just that we talked about, but in general. So I'm going to let you know what that looks like, because there's a, to order online, I'll give you the password, and then you could go at it as soon as this class is done, order supplements if you want them, and you'll get a 10% discount. It's good till Friday night. Okay, I'll talk about that in a minute for those of you that may have to move on. All right, so hi, Dr. Rainey from Jenna, my mom and Grammy. Jenna, yeah, that's great. I haven't seen them in a while. I hope the doggies are okay. Let's see. So the recordings will definitely be posted. Our IT specialist, yeah, I guess that's the best way I could put it. We're figuring out a way to create a portal to where all the registrants can have access to this portal that will have all the taped replays on there. We're figuring that out, and you're in the loop, so you'll get that information. So hi, Amanda in Arkansas. Good to see you. Good to meet you. All right, so HPV cause squamous cell carcinoma. Can RGCC be very informative for virus-caused cancers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, same concept, because we need to know what the strategies will be to go after those cells.
Right.
And the RGCC is one of the tests that can help us with those strategies.
Absolutely.
So no matter what, even if it's HPV related, we need to know, okay, how the best way to attack it. But then also there's ways to bring down viral loads. There's SOTs, there's ozone, there's a lot of different things that can do that. But at least the RGCC will help us find out how to attack these cells and starve them.
Right.
With any cancer, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but isn't that the primary goal?
Absolutely.
Starve and kill.
Absolutely. Starve and kill. And so the HPV will be a root cause. And then the RGCC would be giving us the treatment modalities that would actually, kill those circulating tumor cells, natural supplements and other. But HPV and other viruses, that's where we get back to the immune dysregulation.
That's right.
That starts at the level of the gut. So the answer is absolutely yes.
And to that point too, whether it's Epstein-Barr, HPV, etc., if your immune system doesn't have too much overload, right? So the way I look at viruses that I've been taught, if I have a high viral load, whether it, again, whatever it might be, it's usually because my immune system is doing too much elsewhere. Fair? And then those antibodies start to go higher and higher, and then they replicate, they
Right.
cause cell replication. So to Dr. Henderson's point, if we can bring down the immune system load by getting rid of these other fuels to the fire, do things directly to bring the viral load down too. Now all of a sudden we have a strategy to keep the HPV related squamous cell carcinoma better under control.
Right.
Kill the squamous cell carcinoma, get the HPV load down.
Right.
Fair?
Mhm.
Yeah. So hopefully we answered that one for you. So that campfire to turn into cancer, how many years? That's a good point. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, honestly, in most cancers, it takes about a decade, 10 to 12 years, because you have to go from one cell to a billion. It doesn't happen overnight. So but the campfire can turn into cancer, pretty quickly when it reaches a certain threshold,
Yeah.
and things are just like, boom, out of control. But typically we see most cancers take 10 to 12 years
Yeah.
to form.
And is it true? I read this on the RGCC sheet because I was just looking at it before the class. RGCC can pick up cancer within 1 to 2 years, is what I read.
Yeah.
That's from a researched oncology journal, whereas scans may take 8 to 10 years.
Exactly.
I'm right about that, right?
Yep.
Gang, I when I read that, and I didn't know that, and that's my ignorance, but I couldn't believe that. I'm like, there you go. Like, there's the proof in the pudding as to
Right.
why you would do something like that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and to that point, if somebody goes through, say I'm holding on, my immune system's dysregulated, but it's not necessarily cancer yet, or it's not detectable cancer. I go through a major stress response in, say, a 2 to 3 week time frame. Could that propel the cancer into full-blown cancer that's identifiable, detectable on films?
It happens.
It
I've
does,
seen it
yeah.
happen so many times. The impact of emotional stress cannot be underestimated, but it can very quickly change. Because cancer is dynamic. It doesn't play by the rules.
That's right, and it's already set up.
Right.
So if that happens, the environment's been there for a long time. Your immune system's kind of like, I'm holding on to this, but then say stress, or gosh, it could be, we've seen it with vaccines.
Yes.
We've seen, you add something to the system that the system's already immune system dysregulated. Well, any type of antigenic response, whatever it is, and I'm just using that as an example, can create this inferno, because your immune system's going to have to respond aggressively to it. Right. And then all of a sudden, you could have more of a dysregulated immune system that causes this process to go out of control.
Exactly.
I feel like I've seen that recently.
Yeah.
Just between you and me.
Absolutely. I hear
you. Okay, so hormone imbalance, yeah. And there's testing that we do that are really, really good to get hormone metabolites, and I will tell you, and Dr. Henderson will probably tell you this, my training in hormones is downstream in the sense that it's rarely primary. It's often secondary to inflammation. Stress is a huge one because cortisol impacts, and pregnenolone and DHEA impact your hormones significantly. So stress, in my opinion, is a huge hormone dysregulator. Absolutely. Would you say that's agree?
Yeah, as are toxic estrogens.
Yeah,
just to briefly, and those are toxins that are stuck in our body for estrogen receptor driven cancers. It's very common.
Where do they come from? Those xenoestrogens?
So a lot of them, they come from our environment, plastics, water, the food we eat. And it's a result normally of poor detox pathways, which is a separate talk that we'll give another time.
We will talk about those genes, those epigenetics, which is gene expressions, and we're going to hammer that one as well.
Right, but it's very interesting that these estrogens aren't usually from our own estrogens.
That's right.
They're from estrogens from the outside that we have to get out of our body in different techniques and ways that we'll talk about later.
Yeah. So that opens up such a can of worms, right?
I know.
But we will get there.
Talk about
hormone imbalance, emotional, chemical, and physical stress is going to be a whole, maybe 2 classes, to be honest with you. So we'll definitely get into all that for you as well. Okay, so toxins. I have all those toxins. How can I help my young kids in a preventative way? Yeah. reduce the exposure as best you can.
Yeah, water filters,
Yeah,
organic food,
stuff that
air
goes on your
filters,
skin.
EMFs, the cell
Mhm.
phones, computers. It's a hard job
Yeah,
for
and
everybody.
and even some of those products, shampoos,
Hmm.
things that go on the skin because they're absorbing in as well.
Right.
And not to, we don't want to freak out and go, oh my gosh, there's so much to this, because there is a lot. But again, there's priorities, right? Do it slowly. Just work. Kids are fortunately resilient. Their bodies just methylate so well, they get rid of stuff so easily. And so you have time to be able to start researching these products that are have less junk in them, xenoestrogens and the pavas and things like that that can clog everything up. So two ways: one, reduce the exposure, and two, just make sure they're healthy, right? And when I say healthy, you can give young kids the supplements like a little bit of D and a little bit of C. I'm not going to give you a dosage, but you can give them things that are going to keep their immune system. And I'm big on liver detox. So I love my B vitamins and things like that that will help phase one. Some of your things that will help phase two detox. And just like a tortoise in the hare, you don't have to go 1,000 miles an hour. Just do a little bit consistently,
Right.
and that helps. And we will talk about those strategies down the line in subsequent classes. All right, gut problems that are causing dopamine and serotonin problems. Yeah, great question. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the GI tract is 90% neural networks.
Mhm.
So you have, again, the gut immune brain. So, you have everything coming into the body, gut dysregulation, gut on fire, and then the blood-brain barrier. And then you have an intimate connection between the brain, the gut, and then vice versa. So they both interchange with one another. So it's very, very common because a lot of serotonin and 5-HTP is in the gut, produced in the gut.
That's
So it's
exactly
an
right.
excellent question, and very, very true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the gut brain axis, they
Yeah.
call it, right? And did you mention how much percentage of those neurotransmitters are synthesized in the gut?
It's like
It's a
90%.
large,
It's a lot.
large
Yeah.
amount.
Yeah.
So gut problems, brain problems for sure. So great question. Let's see. Brian said whole plant-based nutrition is optimal. Sorry, I don't know how sometimes this thing goes. It's touchy. Optimal for lowering inflammation. So good question. I had a patient actually articulate this to, I think, somebody downstairs, that they didn't love the fact that we talked about meat, right? So let me clarify that. We definitely individualize a plan per person, right? So we like plant-based. We're very big fans of plant-based. But I will tell you personally, I've done a million, well, I've read a lot on research on foods. I'm okay at times with small amounts of organic, free range, free roaming meat at times. Okay. But I will tell you, yes, whole food plant based is probably a great way to go. I will tell you though, the problem with that I've seen personally, and Dr. Henderson, you can add to this, some of my plant-based patients are some of my unhealthiest patients. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll tell you why. They don't understand what they call food combining. These essential and non-essential amino acids, you don't get a full complement of the essential amino acids from one plant. So you have to plant combine, which means if you're not getting your building blocks, we see fragile hair, we see weak skin and hair and nails and things like that. But if you're doing it right, which you need somebody to help you with, it's a very good tool to utilize for healing. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Do you see that or no? Am I off base with that?
I do. And I think the important take home is everybody needs an individualized
right.
food plan because, some people are vegetarian, vegan, keto, paleo. And so everybody's different. And so it's just really important to have someone guiding you with the proper diet.
Exactly right.
To make sure, of course, we want to minimize sugar. That's the main thing, but you have to have enough healthy protein for fuel. So it's a great question, complicated answer, but the importance is that you really have someone, a trained nutritionist, guiding you.
Yeah, and meeting you where you're at.
Right.
So doing this as long as I've done it, I'll put somebody on a plan, but if they can't do the plan, if they won't stick to the plan, what good is it? So at least I can meet them where they're at and say, okay, just clean everything up. I like the term, if you're on a deserted island, what could you eat? You could pick it or chase it.
Right.
Okay. that's clean. You're not going to get grains. You're not going to get the things that in the research show are heavy inflammatory. Plus, you're not going to get herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. You're not going to have the glutens and some of the dairies and things like that that are known to be heavy inflammatory. So yeah, if I'm nomadic, if you will, I'm going to do a lot of plant-based stuff. Once in a while, there's a kill. I catch a fish once in a while. But so I think if it's used in context for some people, they can still follow that type of plan and feel comfortable with it. But if we start going, hey, you're going to go entirely plant-based for somebody that's been eating meat for 40, 50 years, that's going to be a hard sell.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have to individualize it and meet you where you're at with that. So it's not that this patient was upset because we were promoting meat. That's not really what, I don't remember doing that, but that's not really what we do. We individualize it. So anyway, let's see. Animal foods are critical for healing, not just plants. And that can be true, right? And we want to make sure with that, as Dr. Henderson said, it's individual, right? It's an individual process. So, right, if you don't find the causes, Katie, you're right on. Katie's been with us a long time. So she knows, she hears us say it, the fuels to the fire are critical. Increase our health defense and cells. I think that sometimes this is underestimated. Yeah, agree. It's a huge factor, gang. Huge factor. Remember, plan. If it's well thought out, well orchestrated, the details are really, really good, you just have the best chance.
Right.
That's all we're saying, right? Unfortunately, nothing's ever foolproof, especially this cancer thing. It's still an enigma.
Absolutely.
All we want to do is put your chances as high as you can. And that way you go, okay, I feel good about the plan. Less stress, less anxiety. Gang, we know when people come here, they've been fighting with their doctors, they've been fighting with probably their family. They're going, what are you doing going to an integrative clinic? You need to go here, right? And people that have done their due diligence, like you all, are going to probably fight that a little bit because you believe in, kind of a 4-pillar or working on causes that are not necessarily identified. So yeah, I mean, with that, we know we have to prove you right. So we want to dot every I, cross every T, have good people downstairs helping out and making sure you're taken care of really, really well. All right. 5 years is useless because it takes more than 5 years to detect the growth cells. Yeah, good. Yep. 10-year statistics make better sense and they don't track it. You're absolutely right. I agree with that 100%. So the comment was 95% cure rate in 5 years is kind of useless because it takes up to 10 years. So it would be a 10-year tracking. But to that point, that's why we do the RGCC.
Right.
It's exactly why we do the RGCC. We want to make sure that those statistics that they're saying everything's good, right? It doesn't always mean everything's good because of that right there. Okay. Animal protein increases proliferate. Yep. TOR, Jeff equals cancer growth. Estrogen in animal products also stimulates cancer growth. Yes, you are right about all that, right? And the estrogen, if you're free roaming, free range, you get a lot less of that, right? But to this point, there is a lot of studies, Brian, about that for sure. And we're aware of those, right? So again, individual, but we lean heavily plant-based, I will tell you that. Circulate, let's see, but we don't have all the CCCs. How do we know what's a good number? Circulating CCCs, but we don't know. Okay, how do we know what's a good number? Well, maybe we'll get to that one. Let's see. Okay, a couple more, gang. I know we're running over, and I apologize. Great information and balance in our body's redox. Yeah, molecules increase communication with cells. Yep, can do the job repairing themselves. So to this point, right? Your body is a well-oiled machine. It has the ability to repair and replace and have your body last a very long time, have your brain last a very long time, but not if we have these complicating factors.
Right.
So, we're born, pretty solid. And then the things we fail to do to it, or the positive, well, I say the negative things we do to it, or the positive we fail to do to it, creates this problem. Right. So if you learn more, you know more, you can apply more.
Right.
All right, one more, gang. So melanoma, stage 1, went to Dr. Keneally after my surgeries and did the RGCC, came back with 2 circulating tumor cells. it's a must no matter what stage. Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anybody, and I will say the difference in testing. So if I'm preventing cancer, I want to know my circulating tumor cells, if there are any, right? So that's an oncotrace. That's a much cheaper test. And it's euros, so there's a conversion rate, but $700, something like that. Is that fair? Okay. If we're doing the RGCC complete, which is tumor cells, natural cells, and chemo. That's if you have cancer and you're considering, say, low dose chemo or even chemo, that's the test you want to do. If you're preventing recurrence, definitely the oncotrace, just doing the circulating tumor cells, right? So there's a, I guess, a plan for each of you, depending on what you're trying to do, right? So just give you that piece of advice. Okay, so we're way over now, 6:15. So gang, I'm gonna cut it off here. I apologize. We're gonna try to work on having a moderator that can help answer these questions for us, but I apologize. It's hard when there's 500, 600, 700 people on, but hang in there. Hopefully with each class, we answer more and more questions in a sense that not directly via the chat, but in the class.
Right.
So the following classes or subsequent classes are going to be all on the causes and individuals. So it might take us another, I don't know, 12 to 15 weeks to cover them. So we'll be here as long as we need to. Let's put it that way. Okay. So if any inquiries for a new patient of like preventative or wellness, that's the center side. I'm sorry, that's over here. That's the center side. So 30,000 square foot, half is wellness, half is integrative cancer care. So cfnmedicine.com, 949-867-6419. Okay. And then if there's an inquiry for the cancer center, 949-867-6374, cancercenterforhealing.com is the website. Okay. So either the phone or the web, there's a chat option on the website that Dana monitors constantly. She can help you with anything you need. And then the supplements, right? So if you go online to shopcfnmedicine.com and type in the password Immune Boost when you order, you'll get 10% off starting now up until 11:59 Friday night. And then once it's done, 11:59, that's when they're extending the offer to. So just to give you a little bit of based on us talking about supplements, and every week, I'm not going to talk about supplements every week. If they're relevant, I'll let you know. Okay, everybody? So listen, I hope that was helpful. We'll do a review next time, and then we'll talk heavily about the gut. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great week.
Night.
Have a great night, gang.